All right. Call to order the October 12th, 2021 meeting of the North Andover Planning Board, meeting at the Senior Center. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting of the North Andover Planning Board will be conducted in person at the meeting location, which is the Senior Center, and via remote means in accordance with applicable law. Specific information, the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and a requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.northandoverma.gov. In-person attendance of members of the public and board members will be permitted. A recording of the meeting will be posted on the Town of North Andover website as soon as possible after the meeting. If members of the public would like to participate in public hearings but not attend the meeting in person, please email your question or comment prior to the meeting to jenright@northandoverma.gov. The question or comment will be read during the proceedings and responded to accordingly. So tonight, because the Board of Selectmen are meeting at the same time, we're actually not going to be airing live, but this will be available to view as soon as possible. Jean, want to take roll since we're partially remote?
Kelly Conner. Here. Peter Boynton.
Here.
Alyssa Koenig.
Here.
John Simons.
Here.
Eitan Goldberg.
Here. All right, can everyone hear okay? Okay. First up, A&R plan, 0 Ingle Street, 1750 Salem Street. Mary Jane Dunn, Carrie.
Good luck.
I'm going to go with Pizbiz. Someone can correct me later on if that's incorrect. Sure,
Yep.
come on up.
All right, so, Bill, can the A&R be shown on that as well?
If you share.
If I share it. I thought I did. Okay, so this, there are two lots here. The lots were formerly known as Parcel A, Parcel B, and Parcel C. This plan suggests renaming these lots as two lots, Lot 1 and Lot 2. New Lot 1 is the exact same boundary lines as Parcel A had been. So no change to those parcel lines at all. So new Lot 1 shows the same area as former Parcel A and the same upland as former Parcel A. I will caution you that the upland calculation has been questioned by the building commissioner. It does not include the buffer zones to the wetland in the wetland portion of the calculation. There's a note on the bottom of the plan that specifies that no determination has been made as to the buildability of Lot 1. Lot B and C are going to be conveyed, Lot B is going to be conveyed to C to create new Lot 2. Parcel B has been identified as not a buildable lot, so they combine, and new Lot 2 adds about 8,900 square feet to former Parcel C.
And where is the frontage for new Lot 2? Is it on Ingle Street?
New Lot 2 is on Engle Street.
Okay.
Yeah. You can see that dotted line is the buffer zone to the wetland that exists on Parcel A. But there's plenty of frontage, and there's a single-family home on that lot today.
Okay, and so even though the wetlands aren't really marked off as they should, there's no concern about access?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right, so we still have frontage, we still have access. The only issue being that may not actually be buildable, but I think for A&R purposes, it meets the requirements.
Well, I do think this is one of the more confusing ones I've seen, and it's not very well labeled of the before and after. Is Parcel A composed of what's Parcel A with the line plus new Lot 1?
No, so that line down the middle is the lot width. That was confusing, so he's just showing what lot width is.
Take it out. It's really confusing. I mean, because I'm looking at it on Parcel A, that's the stuff on the top part of it, and then the other stuff is on the
Yeah. So
bottom of it.
New Lot 1 and Parcel A are the same
Yeah, but I
boundary
mean, I
lines.
think that the point ends up being is that line has got to get taken out before we
Okay.
sign it. It's going to create confusion.
The width line.
Yeah,
I
that
really
was line.
don't think that's confusing. It's very simple.
It's okay.
Well, no, what I'm saying is for legal conveyance purposes, it's not something you should put on a Form A plan. Because when you look at it, it looks like new lot 1 is just the bottom piece of it and parcel A is the top piece of it, and that's not what it is. I think you can, I don't think you want to do that for that purpose. It doesn't add anything.
It's identified here as lot width.
It doesn't matter.
Okay, I know.
It doesn't
That's
matter. It's, and then the other one is new lot 2 is, where is parcel B?
The bottom section, this sliver. And that's to be conveyed to parcel A, parcel C, to create new lot 2.
Okay. But, and what's parcel C?
Parcel C is an existing lot with a single-family home on it.
But again, it looks like there's 4 or 5 lots here. There's all these lines here that look like there's lot lines.
They're showing dimensional setbacks to show that they're not creating any zoning nonconformity.
Dash them or something, it really creates a problem. And I think you also need like a code that basically says what we're doing here.
Was that what the note says? I'm trying to read the note.
And the legend's upside down, by the way.
Parcel A will become lot 1. Parcel B and C will be combined to become lot 2. So that's in the note. I mean,
Yeah, but the problem is, when you look at parcel A, if you were looking at this, you would say parcel A is only this.
yes, if I were just looking at this map, I'd say there's parcel A, there's new lot 1, there's new lot 2, there's parcel C, there's
And
parcel
that's what I'm
B.
saying
there's
is,
4
we
other
got
things up
to
here.
make them dotted or something like that so that they don't show up as line. I think if you do that, the thing will be clearer. I also, parcel A, how big is parcel A?
122,000 square feet,
Okay.
and they're in R1.
And parcel A is, let's see.
And there's no structure on parcel A today.
No, there's no structure of parcel A today. And what is the CBA on?
So wait, can I ask a question? So why rename parcel A if it's not changing?
That's what the engineer presented.
See, yeah, I mean, it would seem to me you would just create a new parcel for B and C and name that something and, make it the new parcel B or whatever, or parcel D or whatever. But I'm not sure why change the name for the first one. But
Was there one lot there before, or were there?
right now there are 3 lots. Right now it's 3, right?
Yes.
Right now it's 3. It's A, B, and C. And basically all this is doing is combining B and C.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it would be beneficial to not touch A if you don't have to touch A, because that lot was created prior to 86, I would expect, which
Mhm.
wouldn't be subject to the contiguous buildable area zoning requirement.
I mean, it doesn't look like if it's 122,000 square feet, since the wetland goes through the entire thing, you can only count the stuff on one side in the CBA, and it doesn't look like there's, maybe there is, but it barely makes it, I would think.
Yeah, but they haven't included the buffer zone, so they haven't included all of this and.
Well, they
all-
can include this, because it's not contiguous. So the only thing they can include is this piece, because it's not contiguous, because
That's what I'm saying, the contiguous calculation cannot be correct.
yeah, it can't be correct. So you're right, is if you want to keep that covered the way it is, you don't want to,
Or you only keep this side, because this is the side that has frontage outside of the wetland buffer zone.
Well, it's not the wetland buffer zone, it's the fact that it's not contiguous upland.
I agree with
Yeah, so I don't think there's an acre and a half of continuous upland over here, so I think you want to keep the lot the way it is. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't in the end have a problem with this, it's just that it's not, I don't think the form is that good.
Anyone else have comments, questions?
Nothing additional.
Peter?
All set, thanks.
So, John, what would you
I
recommend
mean, I'm
doing?
okay with approving it subject to, you know, Gene's discretion that the confusion gets cleaned up, that's all. And that we deal with the CBA issue in that lot, but the easier way to do it may be just not to touch that at all. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I would suggest. So keep it parcel A and don't touch the lot.
So, the idea, right, so ideally, what we would approve, so we approve the planner to assign a Form J, creating a new lot? I mean, do we need the map in front of us, I guess is my question. Right, so I agree with John, if we get rid of these lines.
Or dash them.
Or dash them,
Yeah.
so that B and C, or this new lot 2, actually looks like one actual lot, and then have that be the only lot that gets
Yeah.
changed, then sure, then it has the
think we're
frontage,
fine,
then I
yeah.
think we're fine.
so I'm fine with making a motion to that effect.
All right, so a motion to allow the planner to sign the, is it a Form J? With the, new lot 2 having the appropriate dashed lines and the appropriate, CBA in parcel A, or if there's no changes to parcel A. Jean, you good with that?
Yeah, the CBA, I don't think it has to be the right, because they've given the note saying it's not,
Okay,
no determination of buildability, but
Yeah,
again, I
mean,
would
that's-
advocate for not touching it at all. That's
okay.
with the engineer, as long as he goes that route.
Do you get what we're saying?
You just want to make lots 1 and 2.
Well, so the parcel A, the new lot, we don't see any reason why the engineer's changing that. Like, just leave it the way it is. You're gonna get.
Right, because
you're-
it hasn't changed.
Right, so you're gonna get more benefit zoning wise if you just leave it, and there's no
Mhm.
reason to change it,
That we can see. And
that we can see.
I'll
If
talk
the-
that through with the engineer to make sure there's
Okay.
something that we're
And
not
then-
aware of, but
B and C, we're fine combining those and making that into a new lot. He's just gotta make these lines more clear that this is one lot, because right now when you just look at it, it looks like 6. So just have, as long as he clears that up, and just, that would be the change, then we're okay with it. Okay, so, motion made by John,
Second?
seconded. All in favor, Kelly,
Yes.
Peter,
Aye.
John?
Yes,
I vote yes. Alyssa?
Yes.
Okay, so it's approved, but approved that Gene can sign off on it once it gets fixed up, okay? So have your engineer call her and get
Okay.
it fixed, and then you'll be good to go.
All right.
You won't have to come back here,
All right,
okay?
Carrie, you can call me tomorrow if you'd like, if you have questions.
okay.
Okay.
Wait, how do I pronounce your last name?
Kashivitz.
Okay. Okay, bond release, Reese Street definitive subdivision, Robert Innes, request for partial bond release in the amount of $42,600.
Okay, so this is the 7-lot subdivision that's being
Yep.
constructed as Ray Street Extension. All 7 houses have been constructed, I think all conveyed at this point, or close to it. DPW has recommended a bond release of $42,600, leaving a balance of $64,957. The developers are anticipating coming forward with street acceptance for the Maytown meeting, which means beginning in December, they have to start meeting with me, but it is in good order. And so the spreadsheet's included in your packet.
And what's the 64,000, is that for the street?
Street acceptance is a big piece of it, but there are other line items here.
Where is that?
So the sewer pump station,
Yeah,
they're releasing 10.
Okay, but DPW broke it
Catch
down.
basins still have 3,000, so it's a lot of small line items.
Okay.
on that.
All right, so can we get a motion to release, partial bond release in the amount of 42,600?
So moved.
Motion made. Wait a second.
Second?
All in favor, Kelly?
Yes.
Peter?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
I vote yes. Alyssa?
Yes.
All right. Bond released in the amount of 42,600. Make sure you get on the street acceptance early. Those things creep up and then you run out of time. Okay, because there's statutory things that we gotta meet there that don't really have much wiggle room. Okay? You're welcome. Let's do some of the smaller items first, just to get them out of the way. 2002 Planning Board draft meeting schedule. Can you pull that up?
What do the yellow highlights in the meeting plan indicate?
So that's what I'm going to walk you through now,
Okay.
Kelly. So
Thank you.
typically, the board meets on the first and third Tuesday of each month. However, there are some exceptions being proposed. The Tuesday, the 26th, of course, is the fourth Tuesday in April, and that's because the third Tuesday is a school vacation week. The August meeting is shifted from the first and third to the second and fourth, and that's because of National Night Out. There is no planned first meeting of September, so that's the blank, and that's due to September 6th is a possible primary, state primary date. And we typically won't hold a planning board meeting for a state election. October 11th and 25th, again, is the second and the fourth Tuesdays, and it's because of Yom Kippur is the first Tuesday.
Okay.
The
Is November 1st election day?
September 6th.
No,
Of next year.
final election, November 1st.
I think it's probably gonna be the 8th, I would think.
Yeah,
Is it?
yeah,
Is it
it's
the
the
first?
second
I thought it was
Tuesday,
the
second,
first Tuesday. Is it the 8th?
I think it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I just thought it was always the first Tuesday.
It might be the first Tuesday after the first Monday, kind of thing.
Something like that, yeah.
So October 25th just keeps the 2-week separation. That's the only reason for going the second and the fourth. It's hard to turn the material around in 1 week. And then in December, the 6th is scheduled, and then the school vacation weeks. And
You could do the 20th, right? Or is that school vacation? Is that school vacation?
the 20th is something else. So Hanukkah is 12/18 through the 26th, and then school vacation is the 22nd through the 30th. So the 13th is an option, but the ZBA also meets on that
You can
date,
do the 20th. Hanukkah's not
the
a,
20th. Okay,
Hanukkah's not a holiday that you have to worry about.
okay.
20th is fine. I'll bring dreidels.
Okay, so the last 12, December 13th shifts to 12/20.
Other than that, looks good. Okay, let's go with that.
Okay,
Okay, great. Thank you, Gene. Annual lake cleanup.
all right, so for communication, just a reminder, annual lake cleanup is Saturday. It looks like there may be some showers, but it, so far, is still on Saturday morning, 9:30 to 11:30. We meet at the Stevens Pond Beach parking lot and kind of get directed to various trails from there. And also, the packet includes the public hearing notice for the Mass DOT Route 114 corridor meeting, which is October 28th. It's a virtual meeting, so all the materials in the packet include the link and the time for that meeting. That's been distributed through the various social media accounts that we have from the town.
Do you know offhand, if not, I can try to look it up, when there's a site view coming up for the middle school field project trial? It's like the 21st. Oh, actually, I have it on my phone. So, the middle school fields project special permit that we issued has being scheduled for trial. I think the trial was supposed to begin the end of this month, but got continued. But I think there's still a site visit if anyone wants to go. There's not gonna be any testimony, you won't be able to say anything, but just kind of go. It's at 6 PM on Thursday, the 21st, if anybody's interested.
I didn't know about that.
Okay, can we get a motion to approve the September 21st, 2021 meeting minutes?
So moved.
Motion made by John,
Seconded.
second. All in favor? Kelly?
Yes.
Peter? Come back to Peter. John?
Yes?
I vote yes. Alyssa?
Yes.
Okay, we'll approve it with that. Okay, Royal Crest Estates, 1 and 28 Royal Crest Drive, Trinity Financial. Tonight, we're gonna go through phasing and construction management plan, Route 114 imagery, student housing imagery. We're gonna get a presentation and information from Merrimack College and an update on the water capacity study. All right.
Okay. Thank you. As always, thank you for having us. As you mentioned, Mr. Chair, we will be going through a couple of documents here. The first ones are the phasing plan memorandum, and then sort of attached to that, or a companion to that, is a sample or specimen construction management plan, which I'll get into. So to start with the phasing plan, this document details a projected plan for the build-out of the entire project as it is contemplated. So it consists of 6 phases, starting approximately, and again, the dates are very approximate here, but starting in 2023 and completing in 2031. So the document details, in sort of broad strokes.
I'm sorry, excuse me, can you just confirm what the name of the document is that you're looking at? I can't see it on the screen that's projected. If you could just confirm, I think I know which one it is, but
Do you have
the document title?
the actual file name, Jean?
So it's in the folder for Royal Crest Estates Trinity Financial. The file name is phasing construction management imagery.
Thank you.
The share didn't work, Kelly, but I'll try again.
So the document goes through sort of access considerations, speaks to utility connections, both during construction and as they will exist in the final completed master plan, erosion and sedimentation controls, and then it displays graphically each of the projected 6 phases. So we do have here Jeff Ketteritz from VHB, our engineer. We have other members of our team. We've got John Martin from Elkis Manfredi Architects. We've got Patty Schrader from Aimco, Air Communities, and we've got the rest of the Trinity team who are available for questions. So the diagrams, as I mentioned, they detail each of the 6 phases graphically. The first phase includes most of the frontage on Route 114. It includes the student housing building along with the 40B component and 1 multifamily building. The second phase includes several more multifamily buildings. And again, these detail also any of the interim sort of drainage that will be built out as part of this, as well as any of the public amenities. The third phase details or shows the construction of the hotel as it's contemplated. The fourth phase is the office building component on Route 114. The fifth phase is one of the multifamily buildings, or sort of the last of the multifamily buildings. And the last phase, phase 6, is the build out of the townhouse component. So these diagrams show all of the existing buildings as they will be taken offline, demolished, and new buildings built. In the interim, some of the existing buildings will still be kept in operation, and that is shown graphically on each of these plans. And then there is a spreadsheet document that details the number of units for each of the phase, the square footages, as well as the number of existing buildings to remain, and the totals throughout the entire build-out. The last diagrams within the package here show any of the interim and permanent roadway connections to abutting properties as well as they are contemplated. So I'll pause there, and if there are any questions on that document, we're happy to answer them.
Kelly, Peter, any questions or comments?
No, not on this document, thank you.
None yet, thanks.
John, Alyssa?
No.
No, but
No, I appreciate that you put in the FAR as it goes, because I know we asked
Yeah.
for that, and you put that in. So during the first phase, you'll be seeking the highway access permits, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Part of that first phase, and so that would coordinate with the 114 project that we talked about previously, there's a 25% hearing coming up for that.
Yes,
Okay, so that the timeline currently lines up?
yes, it does.
If that got delayed for any number of reasons, how would that impact your timeline?
Well, I think it is, I mean, we're fortunate, and the timelines are lining up quite well. But if there was a delay in their project for whatever reason, we don't think that there will be, just considering that the funding is already in place for that project. But if there was, we would work to make interim connections until the permanent highway improvements were made. I mean, and, you know, obviously we may, you know, modify the phasing if we had to as well in order to fit that.
So, and does the stormwater construction match up with the amount of, or can you describe how it matches up with the amount of people like coming in, right? Because it looks like you're starting to do stormwater up front with the student housing and things like that, but I just want to make sure if you're putting 1,000 people in, we have upgraded stormwater for 1,000 people, et cetera, as we go.
Absolutely. Jeff Ketteris with VHB. Good evening. Leave that there.
It's a new board.
Yes. Yes, so at each phase throughout, the stormwater improvements will at least equal or improve what we're going to be required to do as a project total. So it's very front-loaded. Majority of our stormwater management system proposed is is beneath the surface parking lot by the dormers, which is part of the initial phase. So that'll be the majority of it. Phase 2 will include a lot of the surface constructed wetland stormwater areas in the back of the site. But regardless, the change in impervious for each phase will follow up with a detailed calculation to make sure that more than that amount of stormwater volume is provided phase by phase.
Okay, as I was assuming that it had, I just wanted to make sure that you guys had put that in there. It looked like it was, but I just wanted to make sure. Okay, I don't have any other questions. Gene, anything from you?
No.
Okay, all right, let's move on to the next topic.
Okay. All right, so the next document is, it's entitled the New Royal Crest Estates Construction Phasing Plan. This is a companion document to what we just went over, but this is in more detail, discusses what will be within a construction management plan as we get closer to actual construction for each of the phases. So this has been compiled from a number of construction management plans that Trinity has utilized over many of its projects. Typically, A contractor will be assigned or will be contracted for the project and then would prepare the actual document. We would and will submit the actual document with each of the phases as we come before you again for a development project site plan approval, which is, contemplated the process that we would go. So right now, we're, looking at things sort of from a master plan perspective. Once we get closer to an actual phase, we will come before you again where you will see more detailed plans. You'll see documents like the actual construction management plan that will speak to all of the same things that are shown here, but they will have more detail.
So these are typically conditioned in some of our larger development projects. It's a condition of approval.
Okay, very good.
So happy to answer any questions on this document if there are any.
If anyone has questions, speak up. Otherwise, let's keep going.
All right. So at one of the previous meetings there, we had shown imagery of the student housing component within the larger video, but because of the path that the video took, we only showed sort of specific or sort of distant views. So our architect, John Martin, and his team have put together more specific views of that particular building. So that is what you are seeing here. And Jeff Doggett will shortly be speaking more about the Merrimack College student housing component shortly. So we can come back to questions on these images, or, we're happy to answer those or any questions at this point, but we'll leave that to you.
Does anybody have any questions or comments?
And we can come back to the student housing imagery if that'll work for everybody.
Okay.
So lastly, we've got here the requested images of the sort of frontage as viewed from the intersection of Route 114 and Route 125. These are the buildings as they existed within, or they were depicted within the video that we showed previously. So there were comments about, what the landscaping and the trees would look like over time. So there are 4 separate images. There's an image that shows the landscaping and the trees as they are installed at year 1. There is one that shows them at year 5. The next one is at year 10. And the last one is at year 15.
And Mike, can you orient us? Is this the first building that you would come to coming from the east?
So yeah, so to the east, there is you can see behind these trees, those are existing trees. The trees furthest to the right are trees that are on site today and would remain. There is a multifamily building behind those trees. To the right of that is the office component, and then going west or towards the north, you pass along the remaining frontage of the master plan. So the building directly in front of you is one component of the 40B component of the project. The building next to it, to the left of the image, is the other building on 114 related to the 40B component. Beyond that is the town green, And then beyond that is the student housing building. And then to the left of this image is Merrimack College, the Merrimack College campus.
Okay, so I'm just trying to orient myself, so. Is this, so the building with the trees in front of it where you show the growth, is that D, building D?
That is building F.
F, okay, F,
Yes.
all right. F, then D, then A, okay.
I guess the only comment that I would make is, again, these things look like nice pictures. I don't believe it. I honestly don't believe in 1 year that's what it's gonna look like. And in years down the road, I mean, it's certainly a little bit more realistic than what we saw before, but I still don't buy it. Sorry.
So is there any specific feedback? Is there anything?
Kelly, any thoughts from you? I know you had mentioned, you know, kind of these, either viewpoints or this, view as being something that you wanted to see more about. Does this do it for you? Is there more that you want to see?
I mean, honestly, that's kind of same feedback, right? Like, this looks pretty idyllic. I've never seen this little kind of combining a few things here. I've never seen this view of cars on this road, so it makes it look like a very different experience than I think what we experience now. I think it's only gonna get worse. I'm just trying to think what this is gonna look like with all the traffic out front. They're showing a bicyclist on the road. I mean, and again, this is, I think, 35 feet from the curb, so this is my concern coming in off this road, it's, you know, one viewpoint, but as you're coming in off the bypass into North Andover, and we're gonna have these, what do you think, 72 feet? I might be wrong with that, but I think 72 feet worth of buildings right on the road. Right. This kind of shows what I was concerned about.
So if I could just call up John Martin here just to explain how these images were put together.
Sure.
So the foreground of this, where as you look from the street, is an actual photograph. So that was taken a couple of weeks ago at about 6 p.m., so around dusk time. So this is an actual photograph. I mean, it was, and that's how it was based. But John, you can go into some detail about that.
Sure. Just in terms of the accuracy of the projection, it's as accurate as our computer modeling will allow us to do today with a photograph matched to it. In terms of the trees, the species, the caliper, the height are all as would be specified by the landscape architect and installed by the contractor. In terms of the viewpoint that you get as you come into town, from further back, obviously the buildings look shorter, and so we chose to do a view that was right at the intersection because that's when the buildings would appear the tallest. And then as you turn left and move to the west, it gets into more of what we showed you in the video. So I think it is within the state-of-the-art technology, an accurate representation of what you would see there. And I do think that the trees will grow. They face south. They'll grow quickly. And as we talked about last time, the very presence of these buildings on the street will serve to calm the traffic. It will change the nature of the road in front of the buildings. Even if the Department of Transportation doesn't make the improvements to the road, which we think they will, it will help to transform from a high-speed corridor to a lower speed corridor.
No, I think that's good.
Okay.
Eitan, I have a question or two.
Yeah, a little loud. Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
A little loud.
Very well.
I am loud?
Yeah, okay, you're good now.
Very cool.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
A question for the architect. If you look in the year one rendering, directly under the two red streetlights, you can see 3 green trees that are taller than the trees to the left of those. You see the 3 taller green trees right under the red lights?
We do, yes.
How tall are those trees as depicted in this year one drawing?
They appear to be between 20 and 25 feet tall.
So the reason I'm asking is I share part of Kelly's view that I'm not going to debate the accuracy of the lines of the roads if it's based on a photo, but I do share the concern that this is an idealized view. And you'll recall that a number of people on the board have been concerned about the idealized nature of many of the graphic representations. Not a concern about the idealized nature of going back to when we started. So when I look at this, I am trying to gauge a reference point in this depiction of the distance of those 4- and 5-story buildings from Route 114. And it looks to me like the way it's been drawn, it's very ambiguous. But if I look at those 3 taller green trees underneath the red streetlights, and if I were to lay them sideways, again, it's very difficult because there's no good reference point for us to judge this. But it looks to me like those trees, if that's a reference point at the height you gave, 25 feet, that those buildings are, in this depiction, much further back than 35 feet. But, I could go on, but just to say that I share some of Kelly's concerns, that this really is an idealized depiction. You've got somebody riding a bike on the side of 114. If they were to do that today, they'd likely be killed. So, I'm just saying that the cumulative effect here is, this is a really calm, lovely scene. And that is not what that intersection is like. And, I have to take the depiction with a grain of salt because that's the way it's coming across. But I appreciate the chance to make a comment.
So just to clarify too, and so this goes along with what we presented at the last meeting. So the distance from the curb line to those buildings that are depicted here is 51 feet. The garage, which you see, which is right behind the 3 trees which you referenced, Peter, those 3 trees are American elm trees, and we do have a plan that shows each of the species of tree. But that garage is 73 feet from the back of the curb to the face of that garage building. So I just wanted to clarify and provide that information.
So the 3 large.
Very helpful, thank you.
The 3 large trees, how close are they to the edge of the roadway?
I don't have an answer to that. I have to look at the site plan. In the site plan, they're shown to be back of the sidewalk and close to the facade of the garage. So I would imagine they're probably 50 feet, 45 feet away from the curb, and 25 feet in front of the garage. What is happening in a perspective view is that the distances are collapsing on one another because of the foreshortening of the perspective. But this is how your eye would see it.
Gene, were there bike lanes proposed or as part of the 114 here?
Bike lanes on the roadway, it's in the shared use path.
Share you. So again, so I guess that's one of the difficulties I think for everybody is that part of this is idealized because there is an idea of what might happen and it hasn't happened yet. So I agree, on the one hand, I definitely agree with Peter, like, yeah, nobody's riding their bike on 114 really right now. But that is part of the idealized plan from DOT. So to the extent that that does happen, I don't know if people are really going to ride their bikes there. I don't know. I mean, but that is part of the ideal. So I guess it's hard to say whether or not we should put in the picture what's there now that doesn't exist or what the idea is for the future that may exist. And I don't know. That's a tough balance, but just something to be mindful of, that I guess that is the idea, at least that DOT has. Whether or not it comes into fruition, I don't know.
Well, I appreciate that, Eitan. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to make some comments here, but I think part of the question that you may have put to us was, you know, what do we think? Is this okay? And, you know, I'm just noting the concern that it's not. And, you know, thank you for the effort, but it's not. I don't want my silence or other comments to then be misinterpreted as, you know, I'm all good with this, because I'm not.
Okay. All right. Anybody have anything else? Anything else from you guys on these? No? Okay, cool. Let's move to the next. So talk about Merrimack. Great.
Thank you very much. Everyone hear me? I'm a little bit higher than the podium here. Jeff Doggett, Executive Vice President, Chief and Financial Operating Officer at Merrimack College, and more importantly, a resident in North Andover at 84 Johnson Street. My goal here is to do a couple of things, three really. The first is to just talk a little bit about how Merrimack got involved in this project, why it's important to us, and why at a previous planning board meeting I was asked by the chair, where is Merrimack's intersection in this and how does this all come together? And I gave a response to that, and I want to come back and give more clarity to that. The second piece is there's been some questions that have been raised by neighbors, and I want to answer as many of those in this presentation. And then the third, quite honestly, and I think is a direct result of some of the work that's been going on here at the planning board, I just want to give sort of Merrimack's take on sort of where we go from here. And I just think it's important for us, and I think for those, when you're done with the slide deck, I think you'll see Merrimack's put some serious investment into this. And we want to make sure that whatever comes out of it, we're all relatively happy about, whether that's a project at Royal Crest or not. And, you know, to some of the points that were just made a moment ago, I just want to make sure that we all understand where that may lead us, right? So those are my goals here for today. So, Gene, if you could just move to the About Merrimack. And I do this not, I call this sort of this is not the ego slide, but I just want to give a general sense because we get asked fairly often, like, what is Merrimack? Like, what is Merrimack and why is there a Merrimack, right? And so I just tried to give a certain sense of what Merrimack is and what its impact is on North Andover. We're just above 5,500 undergraduate students, nearly 5,500 total students. We're nearly 4,000 undergraduate. We're the fourth largest Catholic college in New England, and nearly 25% of all of our students come from the Merrimack Valley. Nearly 1 in every 7 Massachusetts high school graduate who intends to go to college applies to Merrimack. Right? We are, by all indications, an institution that people really want to come to. And I believe, and I think the president and the board believes that that's not just because Merrimack is Merrimack, it's also about where it's situated, right? And the amenities and opportunities that are presented to all of our students and parents and when they come to visit. We are not, despite being regional in its base, we are not regional in terms of our outreach. We are a Division I athletic program, part of the Northeast Conference. For those that pay attention to these sort of things, that's an automatic bid conference into March Madness. This year, we will be playing Gonzaga, which is the preseason #1 ranked men's basketball team in the country, in Indiana on national TV. You'll see just some of the rankings and accolades, and I put that in there just to give a sense as to who we are. We are also we are the only private institution right now working within the governor's early college program, which is taking high school students onto our campus. We do that through the Lawrence Academy. We're about 621 employees right now, like every other business in the world, right? We've got a number of open positions because there are just some people that aren't ready to join the workforce in a COVID pandemic world. About 50% of our workforce comes from the Merrimack Valley. About 25% of our total alumni are still in the Merrimack Valley. We have over 1,000 what I'll call warriors, whether those are residents, alumni, employees, or students in the town of North Andover. And you can just get a general sense from the college as to what our financial impact is. And you know, if I were to come back in a few months, I'd be able to give something more detailed about students, faculty, and staff. And I just do this slide, again, not because this is just chest thumping, although in a certain sense I feel it is, because Merrimack is actually a pretty important entity here in North Andover and in Andover. And I see that, and we see that as a reciprocal relationship, right? We alone don't make North Andover better, right? But we do benefit when North Andover does well, right? And that has been our mindset during this administration for now the past 10 years, as long as I've been there, and the president has been there a little bit longer than I have. And you'll sort of see that as we go through the rest of the slides, that sort of foundational thinking. You can go to the next one. So enrollment growth. So over the past 10 years, you'll see the college has grown considerably. And if this were to go back to 2010 and 2009, you'd actually see that it was even smaller still. Back before that, you'll see that it actually was a little bit larger, and it's larger still. And so what you would see if this went back over a course of time is an institution that actually had a declining enrollment, right? And many institutions that were small right after the Great Recession in 2009 and 2010 had a really stark reality. You either grew or you faced where the next crisis may lead you, which is, I think for some schools, no longer able to advance their mission, right? No one could have predicted what that was, but if anyone is in the higher ed field and you go looking around at what institutions are facing now after a year and a half of COVID, you'll see schools that maintained at roughly that 2,200 undergraduate level are really struggling for what they'll be in the next couple of years. So our focus, the board's focus, they brought in a president. Our strategy was we had to grow in order to survive and thrive. Obviously, we've done that, and we're one of the fastest growing Catholic residential colleges in the country. You can go to the next one. In 2015, really 2014, 2015, we started to lay out what I'll call phase 2 of our strategic plan, because we had a strategic plan to grow, and we were sort of on all cylinders and needed to make some adjustments and speed up some of the growth because we were becoming a pretty hot institution. And in 2015, we laid out a strategic plan. Again, it was the second phase of an existing strategic plan called the Agenda for Distinction. And in it, and you see this yellow triangle, which was if we grew beyond being flat in its enrollments, we saw the need that we're going to be at about 800 to 1,000 new beds over the next 5 to 7 years. Right? That was how we saw the growth of the institution based on all the modeling that we had done. And the institution, primarily through myself, the goal here is we set out to design, finance, and construct new residential halls to meet that demand. And we're going to do that on our campus, and we're more than happy to go about that.
Jeff,
John,
just
yeah.
for a little bit of context
Sure.
here, what percentage of the students actually live in dormitories? What percentage live off campus? What percentage commute? It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm
Yeah,
just
no,
trying
I
to
get it. So, so if we define rented and owned, right? Just we'll do that first because it's how my mind works. So we're talking about what's owned by the college and then what's rented at Rollcrest. It's roughly 75% of students are in a housing unit that Merrimack has some control over, right? The 25% that do not, it's probably 5 or 6% are on their own, and the rest of them are commuting. That's my rough number.
So it's, unlike 20 years ago where probably the majority of students commuted, it's,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that there's some of the reasons you'll see in my next slides as to why that's happened, but I think overall, Merrimack is an institution where we do a lot to help students be successful. We do our best not to end up being an institution that's only seeking the A student, right? And we're trying to not only just grow in terms of size, but we're also grow in terms of access, right? And for some students, access means needing a little extra help, and you'll see in the next slides, some of that happens in housing, not just in the classroom.
Jeff, this is Peter. Can
Thank
I
you.
ask a follow-up question
Absolutely.
here as well?
Yep.
A very helpful presentation and information so far, by the way. Of these enrollment and housing stats that we're looking at now,
Yep.
how many how many Merrimack students are currently living at Royal Crest?
Sure. So, there are two types of student that live at Royal Crest. The first type is a student that is living in a unit where Merrimack has the lease itself. We put that into our housing stock. The students work through our housing selection process, right? And then they live in that unit. Then we have oversight of them. They have RAs and RDs and a resident assistant, resident director. Sorry, I don't want to use all higher ed lexicon here. And then we believe there's about another 100 to 150 students that on their own have rented a unit at Royal Crest.
Give me those two numbers again, please.
It's about 600 is what's in our housing stock. And I believe right now it's about 100 to 150 that is not in our housing stock at Royal Crest, but our students that are living there on their own leases.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So I would argue there's about 750 students living over there now.
So if you were to look at the numbers, then do you have a current shortfall?
Of housing?
Yeah.
So that's a very interesting question. I'm going to give as simple an answer to the most complex situation that there is when it comes to housing. The college meets its housing demand every year, right? That is a function of two things, both having to do with Royal Crest. The first is that Royal Crest has units available for the institution to lease. So a student comes to us and says, hey, I'd like to have housing, I'd like to do it, I'd like to have all the benefits of living in Merrimack housing, and we have a unit that we can do that through Royal Crest. The second is that there is capacity at Royal Crest outside of Merrimack, and so there are students who will initially tell us they'd like to live in our housing, but will ultimately make a decision that they'll find an opportunity with their friends or whatnot, and they'll go live in a Royal Crest unit on their own. Now, they may go to another location as well. Most of where students will choose to live is either Royal Crest or, and I never remember the housing area, but it's the one up beyond Market Basket up on the hill. Those are pretty much the two places that students predominantly go. We don't really have a situation yet, thankfully. We don't have a situation yet where parents are individually buying up units or condos or homes closer to the campus and then putting their students in them. That's more of a urban phenomenon that we have not seen yet. Okay, so I just wanted to cover in the next couple of slides just what is housing, why is housing, and what are the benefits of it. And this is where I will attempt to answer, having gone through all the letters and all the questions that have come up from residents as best as I possibly can, some of their answers, right? So just bear with me here. I don't like to read every line, but I think it'd just be easier here. So residence halls are important communities for engagement in targeted events for 18 and 22-year-olds, right? There is a lot of programming. Just imagine for a moment, without getting myself in trouble, right? A generation that has come up and is now in college where more and more of what their daily activity was not, here's a bike, go into the neighborhood and go do things, right? Come back when the lights turn on, which I think for many of us is how we grew up. Most college kids are actually more programmed and rely on programming as to what their general day, right? And so we're finding, as we are across the country, more students are looking for housing opportunities where they can come together and do what we call targeted events or programming, right? They want to be part of a community, and they want to know how they intersect with each other, and they want to know how they can take advantage of whatever that programming may be. It's 20 kids who say, look, I really need some help in understanding how to cook spaghetti one day, and another day it's I really don't understand, I don't know, I'll make it up, the bylaw process in North Andover, right? I mean, it really does become this real unique opportunity of a living learning situation for students, and we try to tailor our approach to that, right? It allows for connection for students between students and Merrimack staff, right? We're not an institution that shuts down at 5 p.m. For a lot of our faculty and staff, they're around late, and we have a large number of staff that will work within the residential life area. From a programming perspective, we do a lot of things by class. So the first year programming, you could imagine, is a lot more intense than, say, seniors for obvious reasons. And I just want to make this note. We have sufficient housing on the campus for freshmen. We don't see, whether it be Royal Crest or what we would build as prescribed here in this slide deck, be something for freshmen, right? We actually think where the freshmen are is a better location for them, central to the campus, programming space in their facility. So we don't really see that that's a need. So this would be upperclassmen that would be at Royal Crest. And then what type of upper class actually gets into another unique moment, right? Because from our perspective, we see actually seniors where most people would say, well, that's the group I'd like to have. They're the most mature. And while I would agree with that, right, we prefer to and argue that seniors really should be more central to the campus because, quite frankly, right, they're coming to the end, right? They are of age, right? And so we just find like it's better to have more of them on the campus. Allows students to be central to each other for social engagements, provides a central oversight for the college, and there'll be more about that in a moment. But most importantly, we do have a community standards, what we would have called the code of conduct. It does extend beyond the campus, so if there is a student, by the way, that is living in a unit that we don't control at Royal Crest or is up the street or is doing an internship in New York and they end up with a problem, we would actually take responsibility for them within the code of conduct. That's just something that we've done along the way. Offers us more environmental controls and collaborative spaces for the students. Living in sponsored halls also has proven, not just here, but at any other institution, that students do academically better when they're living with their peers, right? And the last one, which I think is important to note here, is when you're putting students in dorms, it does fundamentally reduce the amount of what I'll call town gown issues, right? There is a reality that exists at Royal Crest today, whether it's our units or other units that students are renting. Where in a building where there's only maybe 6 or 8 units, you can have in that single building Merrimack students living next to a family with a little kid, maybe next to an elderly family or couple, next to a single person who is, a young business professional. They all have different lifestyles. They all have different decision points about what their quality of life is. And the reality is they impact each other. I mean, I don't know how, I'm not going to dance around that issue. It's just a reality. We feel that's one of the reasons why it's important to put students in a housing unit, because we actually think there's less interaction and less issues than when we leave them out to rent on their own. Keep going. Building, whether it's on our campus or anywhere else, they all have swipe access, which means you can't get in unless you're swiped. I didn't put it here, but all of our buildings also have video CCTV, so when someone's coming in, if we find that someone's holding doors open and things like that, we figure that out pretty quickly. College staffing, residential advisors, we keep at a ratio of, it's right now 1 to 33. The norm, I think, in higher ed is probably 1 in between 35 and 50. We're on the low side. Graduate resident director is what oversees those RAs. There's an area coordinator who lives in the community, the central office staff, and then there's the dean of students. So it is a large undertaking, and these are the ratios that currently exist at Royal Crest. The only difference is they're following up on, spread out over however many acres Royal Crest is, 70-something plus acres. Merrimack College Police Department has 24/7 operation responses. and for emergencies at any place where we lease or own. We work, I think, very well with North Andover. We do our best to both, A, not be a problem for them with our students, but also we don't want to be in a situation where North Andover is feeling like we're treading into their territory. That's just not appropriate or proper. But a building that we have and we own and we run, what goes on in that building, is our responsibility, and we take that responsibility seriously, both in terms of oversight and then if we need to do any sort of investigation to find out, who was the one that brought in the keg or whatever it has it. There was a question that I think came up in some of the questions. Obviously, if there's a grocery store on the first floor of the residence hall, that doesn't necessarily mean it would be Merrimack that would be operating as the police entity in that public space. I would certainly defer to the chief of police here in North Andover as to what his preference would be, but it certainly we wouldn't be starting from a place of that has to be our responsibility. We would certainly be helpful if that was something that was that the town had an interest in. The community standard staff addresses all violations, and we do sanction students and remove them from housing, and we do throw them out of school. And just so people understand what that means, and I don't think we're unique in this, but at all institutions, you reach a point, for us it's 15 days into the school year, where if you haven't dropped out, you pay full price. You're paying what you're paying. On day 16, if you do something that gets you thrown out of school, you don't get that money back. So what may be a $50 fine in the courts, maybe a $25,000 fine here at Merrimack College, right? So we do take this incredibly seriously. We do also try to find the teachable moment in things, and I think in between those two bookends is where we find ourselves. And then again, the direct programming can provide a lot of educational purposes. And this is how we would approach a dormitory at Royal Crest or Residence Hall, or on our own property, right? From our perspective, there is an obvious difference between how it interacts, either with neighbors or a hotel or whatever else is built around it. But inside those walls, we have, just like every other residence, right? We have a responsibility to take the actions of those that are living there seriously. We have a responsibility to keep everybody safe. We have a responsibility to make sure that that's a good experience for all. So,
Jeff, I have a question.
go
if I
ahead, Peter.
could.
Yep.
Did I hear you correctly that Merrimack would own this 1,000-bed dormitory?
That's correct.
And would you own the land that it's on or the building? What type of arrangement is that?
Sure. So, I'll tell you what we envision, right? And my hesitation in this is not due to the clarity for the college or the current property owner, but it really speaks to the situation we kind of find ourselves in as to how we're trying to judge where we go forward in this project. The original process was the college would work with a third party. A lot of institutions do this. A third party comes in as part of the institution. They're their own nonprofit, 501c3. It's a housing entity within the institution itself. The property would be either conveyed to the college or that entity. The building would be developed based on the financing from that entity. It would be built and run by the college. And then either on day one or on some day in the future, normally 20 years out, the property then conveys to the institution. Those are the sort of financial details that we haven't actually yet concluded on because we don't, where we just exist at the project itself. But that's the basic premise behind where we are. And I think those have been fairly successful development opportunities for institutions. They really started in the South, but more and more they're happening in Massachusetts at a fairly regular clip.
Thank you.
Yep. So, without having any sense of Royal Crest yet in our mind, because we're still in 2015, which is the title of this slide, we asked DSK, which is our architecture firm, Doing Schmidt and Kearns. Tom Kearns used to be the managing partner of Shepley Bullfinch. and does master planning for institutions, Merrimack, Duke, and a few others. I always like to put us in with Duke. I'm sure they love that too. We looked at the corner, so just to give everyone a sense of this, Route 114 would be starting at the lowest right-hand corner and running up to the top into the letters of SI in the title. The Elm Street, or where Elm becomes Andover, as a street, would be running from the S and the I down towards the lower left-hand corner. The intersection where the S and the I is, the period or the dot on the I is where the Bertucci's is. And Royal Crest is kind of hidden behind here where the words are in blue. Building G is the Collegiate Church, which people see predominantly when they come to that corner. And the institution saw this as a really nice place to sort of cap off this part of the campus. This also came as a result of a lot of conversations with where future development of the campus should be. Everything that's on the on the left side that's in green is property that's owned by the college as well across the street or across Elm or Andover, depending on where the property line is. You'll see there's a property line, it's barely noticeable. It starts at the E in Merrimack and runs down the line here. So what is green on the other side, what we call the Elm Street parcel, is actually what's in Andover. What's in gray is in North Andover. Our approach to this corner was to build it out, and you'll see our goal was to do 1,000 beds. But what we thought was most helpful in this was that it could be scalable to the growth of the campus. So you could build one building at a time, right? And the general thought process here was, we're going to get up to about 200, 250 beds at Royal Crest, and then we'll build. Those 250 will come out. The next 250 will start moving into those units. We'll start building the next building. So at no time did we put too much pressure into Royal Crest. At no time did we put too much pressure onto the institution. If we didn't see any growth a particular period of time, we could scale upwards or downwards. It stayed within the campus construct. We were able to put some parking in there, so we didn't have any issues on that. And we really felt like, okay, this makes sense to us, right? I actually put an RFP out. We actually had some of the biggest third-party developers for college housing in the country bid for it, and we were kind of off to the races. But for one thing, I don't know if you go to the next slide. This is just what it looked like graphically. This would be a helicopter over Bertucci's, right? And this was literally what I pulled off the shelf a week and a half ago when I started putting the slide deck together. Obviously at 5 stories, it presents some of the same questions that had come up. I'm sure Peter and others may say, what's the difference between the sidewalk and the building? Does that look like 70 feet or 20 feet? I would just argue we hadn't even gotten to that point. We were literally in the conceptual pencil drawing, this is where we find ourselves phase. But this gives you a good sense of what that corner looked like. And I did actually have a conversation with some folks in the town, and their impression of this was, I really hope this doesn't have to get built, because there are other opportunities across the street, which I guess will bring me to the next slide, and back to the sort of the mindset where I started, right? So starting back in 2013, which just happens to be when I moved into the town, there have been a number of people who have suggested that Merrimack should be playing a greater role at Royal Crest. I think anybody, and I don't say this out of any disrespect to AIMCO, because I think they do a great job. Obviously, we think that because we've got a lot of our students living there. But that is a property that you not only could, quote unquote, more be done with, but it really is a property that I would argue, and it's a term I use, whether they like it or not, it's a term I use, which is it will eventually come to its end of its useful life, right? I think there's been enough presentations here. The Trinity has used terms like it's old or what have you, but I just think at the end of the day, this is a property that's been used in a certain way for 50 plus years, right? It's now becoming a place where there's more and more students living in it, right? I think we're all aware that there have been concerns about just what that type of housing into the rental market is. I know every other project that this planning board has looked at, it's always been how do you compare like the next major project to this in terms of what's there, so I understand all of that. From our perspective, right, as an institution or a business that's been here for 75 years, we just wanted what we thought would be best for the town, right? We've heard from the town that Royal Crest, you know, really needs to have a better future. We're the biggest abutter on it, on 114. We agree to that. We don't want to see something there that doesn't help anybody, certainly not us. So our approach was actually fairly simple. We have a unique moment. Merrimack is growing, and how do you leverage that growth? That's it. I mean, it really is that simple, right? And every time someone would say, why doesn't Merrimack pay a pilot for $200,000 a year? And I would say, why don't we use the leveraging the strength of the growth of the institution and do something where we're going to generate millions or more for the town? Why can't Merrimack do something closer to get more local businesses involved in their business? How do we leverage that and do something close to the campus, knowing that that's where students would go? And that was sort of our approach. Didn't write anything down, didn't have a concept in our head as to what it looked like. But our basic premise was there is an emerging set of problems at Royal Crest. Something will be developed there, right? Something will be developed there. Whether they went the 40B route or they sold it to somebody else who tried to do something with it, or the college ended up just Dover part of the project, which we'll talk about in a moment. Something is going to change at Royal Crest. Something is going to add more traffic. Something is going to add something taller than a 2-story building. Something is going to change what that property is, right? Our feelings were, and I think we've been pretty honest about this with people, is knowing that something's going to happen, knowing that it's not going to sit the way it is today for the next 20, 30, 50 years. How do we come together and use this moment and attack some of the problems that we think the town has or some of the opportunities that it could provide? I just list some here. I don't claim to think these are the right ones or the wrong ones. Merrimack is not the town. We think we're an important partner in the town, but I don't, you know, whether it's 40B or a tax base or a hotel or retail, I mean, sure, those will all be great for us. I think it would be great for the town, but ultimately that's a town decision. We've been heavily involved in the Mass DOT process to make sure they're making a significant contribution to approving 114. I think we all benefit from that, right? Our involvement goes all the way back to the crosswalk and the sidewalks that are on either side of 114. That was a relationship between the state, Governor Baker, in his first 6 to 9 months, then Representative DeZoglio and the institution. We paid for 50% of that project. The state paid for the other 50%, right? In the end, the town was able to connect on those two funding sources from the retail space further up on 114, the Burton's area, the Bertucci's area, by coming across to the Merrimack side, a sidewalk that gets all the way down to the crosswalk, across the crosswalk, and then all the way down to the next business district, right? That was an envisionment of a partnership between the institution and the town, right? And I think that was just one of the many steps that, that we've done to try to help this side of the town. And in the end, right, I will continue to say it, right? Merrimack does not need the Royal Crest project, right? I don't, sometimes I say that and people think I'm being flippant, and I'm not. I'm being very, very honest. We as an institution don't need it, but we actually think that using the demand helps advance something in North Andover that we otherwise wouldn't be able to do. Because I think Aimco and Trinity have been pretty honest that financially, having a 1,000-bed dormitory as part of this project is one of the ways that they make this all work. You know, the next one.
Jeff, before you move on,
Please.
One comment and
Yes.
perhaps 2 questions. The comment is that the pencil drawing that came before this, that may have been early in your process, but I think that's a very realistic depiction. So whoever you had do the pencil drawings did a great job.
Okay, thank you.
My 2 questions on this slide. It would really help to understand in the conversations you had with the town,
Mhm.
you've got here, you know, your very last line, project that benefits North Andover, and you use that phrasing, benefits North Andover, and I think I understand what you're saying. The college has a need. Is there a way for that need to have a dual benefit? It solves the college's need and it helps the town, which I think is admirable and great to see higher ed taking that approach. But help me understand, what does that mean to you as a result of these conversations? How does it benefit North Andover? And the reason I'm asking you is I've heard a lot of people ask this question. How does it benefit North Andover?
Okay. If you could allow me, I'm going to answer the question in a way that I don't want it to sound that I'm being arrogant or pushy, right? But I think it's the best way to answer the question. Imagine for a moment that the developers made a decision, which was to only seek a 40B project or that which is zoned currently on that site. And the college's engagement in this was to build the dormitory and utilize the Dover Amendment, right? Which would, as long as we covered the very few things of which the town would be able to have any say over, one could envision that that could be developed, right? You wouldn't need town meeting. You wouldn't need any of those things, right? I would argue, to get to your question, everything else that the town may find to be an opportunity lost by allowing that to happen is, I think, the benefit of both the process and the outcome. So, right now there's a prescribed hotel. If the answer was the town really needs a hotel and this can happen here where otherwise it wouldn't, that's great. If the town says, no, I don't think a hotel makes a lot of sense for whatever reason, right, and there's some other use, okay. Like, I think that's a conversation worthy of having, right? I would hate to be prescriptive. I don't think it's any stretch of the imagination that an institution of Merrimack's size, that having a hotel directly across the street would be a benefit to it, right? I actually think that's also a benefit to the town, right? Because it's a better chance that hotel will do well. It's a better chance it'll produce the revenue and all the visitors and people going to town, to shops and things like that. But I think at the end of the day, Peter, our view as an institution, and mine specifically, is there are a number of things that I have heard over the years when one gets beyond the reality that Royal Crest can't stay as it is. That there are, call them ornaments on the tree, if nothing else, right? Well, we could solve a 40B problem. Well, we could get a hotel. Well, we could add retail, right? If there's another idea out there, I have all the faith in the world that Trinity and Aimco and others would discuss that. I think one of the points that I would make in this presentation is I feel sometimes like we don't get to those type of interactive conversations, right? And so we end up languishing on just sort of like the largesse of the project and I don't mean to say we can be blinded by the benefits. I'm just saying we don't get into what is the right thing, right? And I think that is one of the concerns that we have. That's a long-winded answer, and I know I deviated from it slightly. So I'll just go back. Did I answer your question, or do you want me to take another cut at that?
No, it was very helpful, and it was not long-winded since it's coming from academia. Could have been worse.
All right, that's fine.
And
So
my
noted.
second and last question.
Yes.
This is not the first time that the board has heard that people have been speaking to town officials for years.
Yep.
And I'm not asking for any person's name, but who are the officials that you have been speaking with by position, not by name? And the reason I'm asking this is I also get questions about the role of the planning board, before this actually comes to the planning board. So can you help us with some description of that?
I will, as long as, while we're having a nice give and take, I'm willing to acknowledge that I think one of the great questions when it comes to a project of this size is what is the right interaction between whether it's the planning board or the town, an institution, the developer, right, Peter? So I do appreciate the question. I would say this because I do feel like conversations that happened in 2013 in a vacuum, right, before one sees what could be developed there, and then to point out it was Mary and it was Joseph really does sort of put them in a quandary. So I'll just say this, Peter. There have been elected officials and there have been appointed officials, right? I'm not referring to anyone who's been a staff member of the town of North Andover. Is that helpful?
Yes, it is helpful. And again, I'm not looking for any names of people, but I interpret that to mean positions such as town manager and select board.
You can.
Okay. Very helpful descriptions. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. All right, if you can go to the next slide. So this has been Merrimack's investment, right? Quite honestly, we were the ones that reached out to Aimco. We're the ones that suggested that they get involved. I used the same pitch on them that I use on you. I highly doubt you have another property next to one of the fastest growing Catholic institutions in America, and there's a lot of opportunity to leverage and do something really special here, right? We recommended Trinity. That's just a personal connection, Trinity Financial, and I worked on a project called Davenport Commons at Northeastern University. I think it was a national model. I really suggested to Aimco that Trinity was the right group because, quite honestly, they have staying power. Where most developers come in, they present, they bang their fists on the table, they say, I can do this as a right and you can't stop me and everything like that. I knew that that would never get us to the right place. Right? Just so happened we were lucky enough that Aimco had already had a relationship with Trinity. Right? We provided critical capital. Right? We made commitment to beds. Just imagine what it would be like to convince a board of higher education to commit 800 to 1,000 beds when we didn't actually need them yet, right? But to recognize what that opportunity would be for this project, and then made a commitment to the town to use Merrimack to leverage economic impact, right? Literally, to 2 town managers, right? And I think both of them have done an admirable job of figuring out that nice mix. We stopped our on-campus housing initiative, right? The rentals have grown over at Royal Crest. That has had an immediate short-term effect that's been positive because we've been able to grow. But the negative on the long term is enormous, and I'll get to that in a second. We rethought our financial strategy entirely, right? Entirely, right? The timeline has elongated. None of us could possibly have predicted COVID, right? And there's a reality that I think we all deal with. There's nothing we can do about that. That's just a reality. Merrimack has specifically not exercised any of its Dover rights because I really do believe that if we were to come in there and be the very entity that slammed our fist on the table, that wouldn't help this project or anybody else, right? So we don't, right? Sometimes I do wonder whether that would be helpful to move a little things forward, but we haven't, and I don't intend to anytime soon, right? But this has had an impact, and this is where this stops becoming a little bit about the town as much as it does about the town and Merrimack, right?
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Go ahead.
On the last slide, you mentioned not, if you could just go back and make sure you get the wording
Yes.
right, not exercising Dover rights. Can you be clear on, or just kind of quickly comment on what that means? What could be exercising?
Sure. So the Dover Amendment in the state of Massachusetts, outside of the Article 80 process in Boston, affords an institution, whether that institution be a church or an institution of higher education, that as long as it is advancing its mission on a capital project, right, it does not require the effort of the towns or the cities in terms of many of the planning processes. In essence, it removes the risk of not in my backyard to advance a project, right? There are very small things that could be impactful, like an institution can't get through conservation committee. It can't claim it's going to build a 6,000 seat football stadium and then claim that it doesn't need a single parking space. But otherwise, an institution has broad development rights. So in this particular case, and we have not done this on any project in North Andover because we've had such a great relationship with not just the town, but the planning board itself. But it does afford us the right to come in and say, we've made the decision, we want to move this project forward, and we're going to advance through the permitting process. And our only obligation at that point would be to notify the planning board and the town.
So Kelly, in essence, most zoning regulations, not all, but most zoning regulations under Dover aren't applicable.
Yeah. I
Not
didn't
applicable.
figure, Yeah.
So,
Familiar, just wanted to make sure everyone else was as
no,
well.
appreciate that. That's good clarification.
And again, to be honest, and I think the past chair would agree, there have been times where having done so wouldn't have been very helpful, right? It was actually coming in and presenting as if this was a project and in past things that we've developed, and I think that that's just part of the working relationship that we've had in the town, and I don't want to have to alter that in any way, nor do I want to cause a problem where if we just said, the heck with everyone, we just want what we want, which I know is a sort of a COVID mentality of the moment. I don't know how that would necessarily help the rest of the project. Going back to advancing the idea, we have held off, right? And this is where things get a little difficult for the college now, right? So our first outreach to AIMCO, my first meeting with AIMCO was November of 2016, which in the spring of this year, we really thought there was an outside chance when it looked like COVID numbers were getting better, that a special town meeting in November, or at least the fall, had a glimmer of hope, maybe in no one else's mind but mine, right? Maybe just because I like the symmetry of 5 years coming to the end, right? But the truth of the matter is 5 years is a long time to hold off, right? That's 5 years of handing over rent checks that could have gone into the equity of a building. It's 5 years of hoping every year that Royal Crest doesn't have, they don't run out of units. It's 5 years of causing the problem in C, which is we're not the only one impacted by this, right? We're dispersing more students and mixing them with families and elderly and things like that. So we're running the point where waiting does start to have a serious impact, and it's not something we can continue to do ad infinitum. There are impacts to that. If we were to go forward and build on the campus today, the reality is that we would end the leases of 150 plus units at Royal Crest. And I'm pretty sure, although I don't know for sure because I'm not the owner, I'm pretty sure we're the largest holder of renting not all of our units are, but I think we hold the most 3-bedroom units in our housing stock. So when we have conversations here about what the financial impacts are about building 2 and 3 bedroom units and how many families might move into those and what it does to the school system, just know that on the backside, building on our campus would almost have the same impact. It's not exactly one for one. I don't remember what those numbers are, but it would be significant. And I say that only because I just want to make sure we all understand where we are, right? It might be the case that that is the right thing to do, but I don't want to be in a place where the college were to take an action and then have everyone say, well, gee, you pat yourself on the back for doing the right thing, but then you never shared with us what the impacts of your decisions really are. So that's my goal here for this slide, and then the next one, which I think is the last. Which is, where do we go from here, right? And this is, the we is as much Merrimack as it is the town. Maybe it's more Merrimack or maybe it's more the town. I'll leave the audience to determine that, right? We're coming to the point where we can't extend much further, right? We're literally at a point now where if you look at the phasing, I am not convinced, in total transparency, I am not convinced that there will be enough of the existing units standing during the construction of phase 1 to be able to accommodate the number of students who can live in those units that are left, that I will then be able to move into a building that will then have 1,000 beds. I know that if we continue to wait, we will eventually exceed that for sure if we have not already. That would be an enormous phasing issue, just as an example. right? And then when we pulled out of those units, if we went across, came back onto our campus, we would be increasing the problem on the backside, just as an example, right? Eventually, the college may have to just say, you know what? We've done this as long as we possibly can. We go back. We'll just do it on our campus. We believe the impact of that, quite frankly, is that the leverage is gone to do a project of this significance. For some people, that might be fine. For some people, that would not. Again, I defer to other audiences.
Jeff,
right?
if you were to go back to your own campus to build, would you think you would bring back that 2015 plan, or would you just start something
No,
totally new?
I would bring back the 2015 plan, right? Because we still have a finance team and a third party that would be eager to move forward with that project.
And buildings have not been built on those locations?
Correct, yeah, it's all empty right now, right? And as a matter of fact, and I'll come back to that question in slightly more specificity in a moment, but the impact would be this, if we were to do that. Because I know there'll be some people who are like, this is great. They kind of get it drawn. They have the ability to go do it. They can fast track it, go. The reality is that not only is we the units that we empty, which will then be a problem for the town and perhaps the school system, obviously that's speculative, right? But I think the most important would be, we don't see ourselves growing at the rate that we've done. We've done our growing. There is not going to be another 1,000 students seeking housing at Merrimack College that we in the town can leverage for whatever growth is necessary next. It would be Merrimack pulling out the leverage point for which what would be left is us as abutters, the town and Aimco to figure out what to do next. And I think you've heard enough from Trinity and Aimco to know that that would be significant, right? What happens there, I don't know. I could sit here and I could come up with doomsdays. Others could sit here and say, no, it's actually not so bad. Like, I could envision something great. I won't go down those roads. All I would say is, I would hate to be at the groundbreaking of our dorms on the campus and have someone say, why can't Merrimack help us do something across the street? And I say, we just spent 5 years trying to do it. Not 5 years here, in fairness to this body, right? But we've just spent all of that time doing it, and now it's gone. And now it's gone. Because in a market where the number of high school graduates in the Northeast is dropping, the reality is we'll be fighting for every student that we have from an enrollment perspective. And the idea that we're going to see another 800 to 1,000 undergraduates grow so that we can be a leverage point in the future, I don't see happening, right? I really don't. So that's a massive decision that the college makes, and I would never make that, without people understanding it. So where do we live ourselves? From our perspective, we believe, we hope, we push that this project will reach a point where the town deems it appropriate to go to town meeting, right? If it passes, great. Then it's got zoning, it's still got to go through MIPA and everything like that. It's still at least another year before we're back before this body to actually have a conversation about what the buildings will look like and all the planning and all the normal things that will happen. But if it doesn't pass in town meeting or we don't get there, then I can't wait anymore, because at that moment I know not only does Royal Crest not going to adjust, right? It's not going to change in its development anytime soon, but I can't wait for it. So we're stuck, right? We are stuck. And I sort of break this into 3 options. Option 1 is, I don't want to do this, and I don't say this to be threatening in any way, but it's just a reality. We could just say, we're just going to move forward with our piece of this project, right? I want to be very honest with everyone in this room. There has been 0 conversations about doing that between Merrimack, Trinity, and Aimco. I will be honest with this, with everyone in this room. Aimco gets nervous about this option, right? Just so we're all clear, they get nervous about this option because that is a massive deviation from what they're trying to do. And we don't own that property yet, right? And they obviously know what happens if they start selling off parts of that property, right? So I just want to be clear, that is something that could happen, but it is not something that has been contemplated yet. Option 2, we can either walk away from the project or the town could simply not approve it. This board could simply say we don't recommend it go to town meeting. You go to town meeting and it failed there, right? We'll go back to our on-campus, but as I said, we're gonna then take away the critical financial aspect of this project. And I think that just harms everybody in the end, right? The third option is we continue to figure out how to work together and try to find common ground. And this is where I go back to, Peter, your earlier statement, which is the role of the planning board. Because I will profess, and I have been schooled on this recently, that obviously towns deal with these sort of major opportunities differently, right? Some planning boards make aggressive perspectives and say, we will only approve if you do X, Y, and Z. Some do not. I don't claim what is a good process or a bad process. I just recognize that I believe from the Merrimack College's perspective, we're reaching the point, I think we would all agree, where presentations happen, positions are taken, no one's really, either the developer, the college, the town, really knows where to go next. So we're in a cycle. And again, I would be happy to have someone tell me that I'm wrong or I'm overreacting, but I don't know if that's true, right? I think it starts with an acceptance that Royal Crest today is not going to be the long-term option, right? That the idea is that something will happen, whether it's from this planning board or this developer or this owner, right? The idea that something will happen on that site is very, very real, because what is on that site cannot stay, right? With that in mind, I think it's helpful to understand that there are some things that can be done without dragging ourselves through this enormous process. But what we lose when we do that, I think, is quite frankly massive, right? And we're happy to help in that. And we have not. I don't go to community meetings. This is only the second time I've actually spoken on this project since it's been before the town, because I did not want to turn it into a Merrimack project, right? I recognize that some people believe that that is, but at the end of the day, we don't see it as such. So I think from our perspective, I just want to make sure people understand where we are, what we're thinking, what we're weighing, right? I get the whole, height and things like that. I do. As an abutter, we don't really have a concern with that. I understand how some people wouldn't take that to be very important, right? Because of obviously the role that we're playing in the project. But my concern is not where are we, but where do we go from here? And so I'll stop. I'm happy to answer any more questions or feedback or be smacked or be sent home, right? But I, for those that know me, I'm pretty transparent, and I do not want to be in a place as a resident. Forget about being a senior member of an institution that's a player here in the town. I don't want to be, as a resident, have people feel like, what happened? Like, literally, what happened, right? Why did, that's happening across the street now, and now we're not doing this, and now we're not doing that, and I just feel like that would be a mistake, right? So I'll stop, and
Thank you,
thank
Jeff.
you very much.
Any additional questions? Nope, I think that was great. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Great, thanks. I'm happy to come back or get any direction from the planning board if appropriate. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, Gene, water capacity study update?
Yep, so the DPW has contracted with the consultant. They are still in the data collection phase, and that's likely going to remain that way for the next several weeks. So we're just in kind of wait and hear phase.
Okay, and so what are our next topics or remaining topics that we need to cover?
So hopefully for the next meeting, we will have an update to the traffic study, an update to the fiscal review, an update on the stormwater preliminary design. One second. Sorry, I have the schedule somewhere.
And the next meeting is October 26th?
Yeah, so we're hoping to get all outstanding elements for the 26th, and November 2nd is a short turnaround, so any follow-up questions to that material, hopefully on November 2nd.
Okay. And so, okay, so then I would just ask if board members have other things that they want to go back to or further discuss, or have questions on, really try to get those for October 26th. Because I think on November 2nd, then if we have everything answered, we need to have a discussion at that point about whether or not this is something that we would be looking to recommend as a town meeting article. Because if it is, then the next steps are finishing up the zoning, going through the zoning here, scheduling, outreach or public hearings or town halls or things like that. Because I think there's going to be a lot of information that we've discussed that really needs to get out in the public. If the answer is no, that it's not going to go forward to town meeting, then it's done and we move on. But I think unless I hear otherwise, and unless there's still open questions, I'd anticipate having a discussion and vote on that on November 2nd. If there's still things that are outstanding after the 26th or on the 26th, please let me know, but otherwise, that's kind of the plan, okay?
Hey, Don, I have a
Yeah,
question
please.
to your question.
Yep.
We had extensive discussions about a pedestrian overpass that was presented to us as use of ramps that was not practical. But as we had those discussions, we asked a different question. The current design has a number of bridges between the upper floors of buildings on the proposed property. The question we asked was, could the pedestrian overpass run from an upper floor of the student dormitory across 114 and gain the necessary elevation by tying in with the upper floor of the student dormitory rather than the impractical ramps? And the question was posed, but we've never gotten an answer that I recall, other than referring to the ramps are not practical. But this is a different question, and I feel like it's an outstanding question that was not addressed.
So Peter, we're
Okay.
going to do an update to the traffic study at the 26th meeting, and that response will include commentary from our peer reviewer.
So let's put that either, and let's just put that whether it's crossing or bridge or whatever, however we want to label, let's
Yep.
put that as a topic for the 26th and discuss it then. It's not really on our agenda for tonight, so let's discuss it on the 26th, so let's have an answer for that. So that's exactly the kind of thing that I'm looking for. So if people go back and think of anything else in the
Good.
next week or
Yeah.
so, let's add
Good.
them just so we can try to finalize some of these things.
And Eitan,
Yep.
one other
Yep.
related question.
Yep.
We also heard about the timing, sequencing of the lights and the crosswalk. Is it possible to ask the town police chief to comment on public safety of the 1,000 students crossing without a pedestrian bridge? I mean, I feel like we should have some subject matter expertise here from someone who has a greater depth in public safety than perhaps we do.
Okay, we can at least ask the police department if they have any thoughts or input. Okay, anybody else, anything offhand? Please take the next week, a week and a half, just kind of look back, just go over your notes, go over the things we've talked about. So we just talked about the water, and I'll do the same, and just either get those, any additional items to me or to Jean, just so we can pass them along so that we can try to tie them up. And again, if we go through things on the 26th and people still have a question, we're not going to end it before we're satisfied. But if we can be satisfied on the 26th, I'd like to kind of put it to a vote on the 2nd, just so we can, again, if it's the end, then it's the end, and if we're going to move forward, then we have other work to do in terms of actually finishing crafting a bylaw and getting this information out to the public if it's actually going to be a town meeting warrant article. Yep. Hold on. If you have a... Yeah, no, please come up. Yeah, sure, why not? Hold on, I'll wait till you come up to the microphone. Introduce yourself and tell us where you live.
I'm Lynn Jacobic, and I live at 105 Berkeley Road.
Okay.
And I was wondering if you were going to read the comments that have been put in the comment section from abutters about this whole project.
Recently?
So they're in tonight's packet, and
Yes, they are in tonight's packet, but
Yep.
I kind of agonized about whether to put this out there after I read the Merrimack packet. I read that, and I found it kind of disturbing. And so I'm just going to read this.
Okay, go ahead.
Yep.
For what it's worth. I
Sure.
know that there are people that feel this, and there's things been said and rumors going around, and now I feel like they're putting their cards on the table now. There's some transparency. And I think I would just like to read this for what it's worth, and you can just make up your own minds and maybe answer some questions.
are you reading one of the comments in the packet?
I'm not, I
Okay.
didn't send it in because I
Okay,
wanted
that's-
to bring it and make sure
Yep.
it was addressed. All right. So, dear Jean and board members, I own 2 properties on Berkeley Road that abut the Royal Crest property. While I oppose many aspects of the proposed development plan, I most strongly oppose the construction of dormitories by Merrimack College on land that it would purchase from Aimco. The reasons are myriad: noise, traffic, neighborhood safety, tax exempt status, etc. And these reasons compel my belief that the property should continue to be purposed primarily for residential use. I also am strongly opposed to the proposed hotel. I am writing today, however, in response to Merrimack's presentation material, which needs some clarification for me. Their presentation states, Merrimack has had North Andover officials suggest Merrimack play a greater role in the future of Royal Crest, starting in 2013. And this statement inspires many questions. Who were the North Andover officials who initially brought their redevelopment ideas to the college in 2013? And who were their contacts at Merrimack College? I know Mr. Boynton brought this up. I'm asking. I would like names. And are any of these officials currently on our boards? Are these contacts ongoing? What role has Andrew Mailer played in the coordination between the town of North Andover and Merrimack College? Since Merrimack secured the financing for the redevelopment project through Trinity Financial, will Aimco be penalized if it chooses not to sell to Merrimack? Does Merrimack plan to invoke the Dover Amendment to build the dorms on the Royal Crest property, even if the town votes against the plan, thus holding us hostage to the Dover Amendment? Why didn't Merrimack follow through with its original plan to build dorms on the corner of 114 and Elm in 2017? Did the town of Andover oppose it? Did coordination between the town of North Andover and Merrimack College influence Merrimack's decision to abandon the 2017 plan to build dorms on 114 and Elm? Were representatives of North Andover promoting that the college participate with Aimco in the current redevelopment plan instead? Are there any assurances that Merrimack won't build dorms or other buildings on its own property in the future after they build at Royal Crest? Merrimack College has just begun to offer us a glimpse of transparency, and it feels like what they're showing us is ugly. If our own town officials have been coordinating with Merrimack College and Aimco since 2013 to bring the current Royal Crest redevelopment plan to fruition, they have betrayed our trust. I don't believe that the expansion of Merrimack College is in our town's best interest. I believe circumstances exist in our town that could challenge the use of the Dover Amendment. I hope that our board will at least consult with municipal council before making any recommendations. Merrimack College should not decide what is in the best interest of this town. We should. Thank you very much. You can answer those questions if you'd like to.
Well, I think there was a lot of questions. So what I would suggest is if you're comfortable, if you could send a copy of that to Jean or to the
I can.
obboard.
Would you like it?
Yeah, so I'll scan it into the packet included with
Okay.
everything.
And then, obviously, representatives from Merrimack are not under any obligation to answer any particular questions. I think a bunch of those questions were discussed during the presentation.
Yeah.
But at least we'll
I know
have
there
that.
are others who would like.
Well, so let me finish. So
Okay, sorry.
let's scan it in, and we'll put it in, and then should they wish to make further comments,
Okay,
they can submit those, I think.
well, he is here
We'd
now.
appreciate that.
He is here now. He
I
could-
know, but that was like 30 questions, so I don't think I want to go through all of them again
All
after
right.
we had the presentation.
Okay, well,
and-
he could submit them in writing.
I'll leave that to them, that's their
You could submit them
decision.
in writing.
Okay,
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
okay. All right, thank you, though, those were helpful and thorough, I appreciate that.
So as far as the other ones, there's 3 comments in the packet. I've carried them for the last couple meetings, so I
Yeah.
don't know if you want them read into the record or.
They're part of the
there.
packet, right?
Yep, yep.
No, we've had the chance to review them. Okay, no, I think that was pretty thorough tonight, so. Does anybody else have any questions or comments before we're done? Hearing none, okay, could we get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made? Okay, all in favor, Kelly?
Yes.
Peter?
Aye.
John?
Yes.
Alyssa?
Yes.
I vote yes, thank you very much.